So I'm going to call this calculator. All right, so I'm going to start a new one because I already had the code there loaded. So again, I want a label. So you're going to design your screen. I want a label. I want a couple of text boxes because I'm going to ask the user to put the text boxes in there. And then I want another label because I need to display after, adding. But I need some buttons. So I need some buttons for what the user is going to do. And I need a label for the answer. So again, I'm going to go to this text down here. So I'm going to click on the label, go to the text here and say enter 2 ints, right? Let's just leave it at that. The text boxes, I can leave the text empty because that's what's going to go in there. Now notice this hint for text box 2. When you test it out, you'll see that in there. Hint for text box 1. So you can say, for example, enter first operand. Operand is just a fancy word for like the first number you want to add or the first, and then here you can say enter second operand in the hint, and you'll see that when you run it. Okay, now the text for button 1, I'm going to go down here and I'm going to change that into the plus sign. And here I'm going to say text for button 2. I'm going to change that into a minus sign. Now you can, under layout, there's all these tools for like arranging how you want the buttons to show up and so on. But you can work on that later. Right now I just want you to understand the process flow of how this app development and event-driven programming works. Now this text for label 2, I'm going to put just an equal sign here because that's where the result will go. So think of it like a rail calculator with the equal sign. Now, a word on programming style. Is programming style important in App Inventor?
Yes.
Absolutely it is, right? And so over here you've got the components. Now you've got button 1, button 2. When I'm over here working in my blocks editor, because that's where I have to go to add the actual code, now I forget, which one was button 1 again? Was it the add button? Was it the subtract button? Which one was text box 1 and text box 2? I don't remember. And especially now in this program you might remember, there's only a few things. But when you get more complicated and you get a whole bunch of buttons, let's say we were doing add, subtract, multiply, divide, isn't it going to be confusing to remember what's what? So I'm going to go back to this designer here. You guys paying attention? Those phones away. Go back to the designer over here. And I'm going to click on each one and I'm going to click rename. So label 1, I'm just going to call that, because it's a label, I'm going to start with the first 3 letters called LBL. So I'm going to go LBL and go instruct. Instruct. And call that LBL instruct. Now text box 1, now, and that's going to help us, differentiate a label from a text box. A text box, I'm going to rename that to, that's TXT is going to be the first 3 letters. And notice I'm using what kind of format to label these variables? Camelback format. So TXT, and then I'm going to call that operand 1. So TXT operand 1, which is the first operand that I'm going to use in my calculation. And what do you think I should name the second one then? TXT operand 2. Again, notice that I'm using TXT, and you'll see why in a second once I go to the blocks. So TXT operand 2. Now, the next one is, what do you think I should use for button? First 3 letters. BTN. BTN plus. Okay, so lowercase BTN and then plus. And then here, BTN minus. So these are the variable names. Does the user see the variable names? No, the user doesn't see the variable names there for you. They are internal. They're for the programmer. But it helps you keep your code organized, right? And so the text and all these properties is what the user will see, but the user doesn't see this one. And let's call this one LBL result. So this will be our label at the bottom, will be our system.out.println, like in Java, to output the result to the screen. Make sense? Questions so far?
I got it.
Think you're good? All right, so now look at that. It's all organized and we know what's what. Now, we have designed our interface. This is our graphical user interface. And now I want you to think of the process flow. This is our event-driven programming again. So, and again, it's valid in, they use this in NetBeans, in Java, when you're actually making graphical user interfaces, the same concepts happen. What do you expect the user to do, and when should things start happening? So, what should the user do when they're using this program? What is the first thing they're going to use? They're going to see the screen. What are they going to do? They're going to enter a number here, and then they're going to enter a number here, and then what?
Press the button.
They're going to choose one of these two buttons, right? Either plus or minus. And when they press the button, what should happen? Prints out the result. So, a lot of things happen when the button is pressed. When, let's say, the plus button is pressed, what should happen? We should grab the numbers from here, from the inputs, add them, and display it. So everything happens when that plus button is pressed, or when the minus button is pressed. Make sense? Things don't happen when the program just opens. Things happen when these buttons are pressed. So pressing this plus button is the event that generates the code. Does that make sense? So that's event-driven programming. So I'm going to go over here to the blocks. I have to scroll to the right on my non-widescreen computer and grab this block. So this is really important. I'm going to go back and forth between the blocks and the designer. So I'm going to go to the blocks. And now you can see on screen 1, which I can also rename once you have multiple screens, because you can have multiple screens as well. And then you want to label your screens as well. But here I'm going to go to, now you can see these are nicely named. So let's do the BTN plus. So I'm going to click on BTN plus. And when that BTN plus button is clicked, notice I can change that option here as well. But when it is clicked, so this is like a method, grade 12s. This is like a method. When this BTN button, and so in Java, you will see a method that's event-driven, but it'll be a method instead of this block. But all the code that goes inside here, think of it like all the code that went inside that method. So when this button is clicked, what should happen? We should grab the inputs and store them where? Where are we get the inputs from? The user? Where did the user type them? In the text boxes, txt operand 1 and txt operand 2. So I'm going to go to txt operand 1, and I'm going to get, let's grab that, and let's change background color. I don't want the background color of the text box. And notice that these are all the properties that were on the right side there of the designer. When we went to the designer over here, we have all these properties. Well, guess what? They're now showing up here in this list for that text box. Right? These are all the properties that you could change. And so the designer lets you change them initially. When you're in the code here, here's where you can change them on the fly. When the user generates an event, oh, maybe I can make it bold. Maybe I can change the color, right, of that text. So here, I am going to get the text. So txt operand 1.text. Now, where do I want to put this text? Notice that this does not fit in here, does it? Doesn't fit in there. That's because I need to put it somewhere. This is like the right-hand side of an equal sign. So in Java, this part right here is just like having an equal sign and having nothing on the left-hand side. Where is the variable I want to store that information? So in Java, this is like typing readInt. My scanner.readInt. But where do I want to put that? I need to make a variable to store that. So I'm going to go to variables. And the variables I can create, and notice that these don't fit anywhere either. Right? It can't fit in there. The variables I'm going to create at the beginning of the program, I can organize it like this. So I can say initialize global name. So this is my variable name. So let's call this operand 1. Now notice that the operand 1 is different than txt operand 1. And that's why we put that txt there, so that we don't get confused. Operand 1 is going to be our internal variable that's going to store that number. Now you don't necessarily need to initialize these variables, but it is good practice. We can initialize those. If I go to the math button here, I can initialize that to 0. Satisfying, click there. And let's make another variable then for operand 2. And again, not to be confused with txt operand 2, which is the text box. This is the internal variable. So now what do I want to do is I want to get the information from the text box and store it where?
Into operand 1.
Into operand 1. So I'm going to go to variables. And grade 12s, remember getter and setter methods?
Yeah.
Look at this, get and set. Okay, same concepts. What do you think I'm going to use here, get or set?
Set.
Set, right? So I'm going to grab that set, put it in there. Notice it fits. The get didn't fit in there. Set fits in there. And so I'm going to say set the internal variable operand 1, think of it like an integer variable, to txt. So I'm going to grab that text box operand and put it into that variable. Make sense? And I know you guys might have done it differently. You could have done it without doing the variables, but I want you to practice using variables because they will be definitely helpful in your apps. So I'm going to put that into that variable there. Make sense? We'll do the same thing here for the operand 2. And I'm going to go to the text box operand 2. And again, get that text. Cool? So now I'm getting the text from when this button is clicked, I'm going to that text box, getting that text and putting it into operand 2, operand 1, getting the text and putting it into operand 2. So now I've gotten those and stored them in variables. So think of that like in.nextInt, in.nextInt, right? And storing them into x and y or something like that. Questions so far? Make sense? You guys with me? Noah, you with me?
Yeah.
Okay, what do I have to do next, Noah?
To set the other ones.
Sorry?
You gotta set the ones on top.
I already did that. So operand 1 and operand 2, they're already set.
Yeah.
So now I've got the information in the two
You gotta add them.
variables. I've got to add them together. So I go to math because I want to add. And let's grab this add thing here. So I'll grab this add thing, but notice again it does not fit in here. It does not fit in here. So what do you think? So, and what do I put in these little puzzle pieces? So, which one? You could put the text, but I took the text and put them into variables first. So I could put the text in there, but let's use the variables. And so what am I going to use now? Get or set?
Yeah.
Get. Good. So I can put a get in there. And I want to choose operand 1 and get. And I'm going to put operand 2. Again, so now I'm taking operand 1, which I've stored in these variables, on operand 2. Think of them like integer variables or double variables or whatever. I'm adding them, but it doesn't fit in there because I want to add it when the plus button is clicked. So what do I have to do here? Where do I have to put this addition? So if I add it, I got to store it somewhere, right? Into a variable. So let's make another variable. Let's go back up here into variables. Let's do that here before. So again, all of this code happens when the program, when the plus button is clicked. But these three things happen here at the beginning of the program. So at the beginning of the program, let's call this one sum or results. We can call it results. And again, initialize that to 0. And now we can go back to variables and we can say sets. What do I want to set? Set results. Set results to these two added up. Now I can put those in there. Pretty cool, right? So I've added them up. I can move this around just to organize it a little bit. And I've added them up. Now what? I've added them up, but what do I need to do? Can the user see that I've added them up? No, I need to output it. Where do I output it? I've got a LBL results, a label result. So I've got to put it back in the label. So this is system.out.println. So I'm going to go to the label result. And what do you think I need here? A get or a set? I need a set. So let's take a set. Okay, and LBL result dot. And again, this is the dot notation, grade 12s, right? You're seeing object dot, like the code is here, right? You've seen that. This is your instance name, grade 12s, instance dot property, right? You're seeing that. It's very, very similar to what we've learned in Java in object-oriented programming. So LBL result dot text, and we're going to set LBL result dot text to, which one am I going to use? Get. And I'm going to say result. So I'm going to get that result and put that in there. All right. So now, should we test it? We haven't done the minus button yet, but this is the process flow. So now at the beginning of the program, we don't want to get the text from, why don't we want to get the text up here? Why don't I initialize them? Why don't I take these and put it in here like that? Why do I do it only when the button is clicked? Why don't I take that text button and put it there? Noah?
Because then, like, when you press minus button, it does the same
Well, we wanted to still grab the input when we press the minus button.
thing. Yeah.
But we don't want, so I'm just saying the input part, not the addition part, but just the input part. Why don't I put that up here and then the other one here? Why do I do it only when the button is clicked? Why don't I do it up there? Think about events. So when the user first opens the program, these 3 lines of code are going to run automatically right away. There's nothing in there right away. So when the user opens the program, we don't want to grab the text because we haven't even given the user a chance to type anything into the text boxes. So that's why the assumption is when the user's clicking the button, Luca, can you be quiet, please? When the user is clicking the text, the button, then the assumption is then they have actually entered items into the text box. All right, so let's go connect AI companion. And then I will scan. Scan QR code. So on the recording, we can't see this part. Oh, there we go. And it will load onto my device. Now, if you are using an emulator, you can put those results in there. So I've got it here on my device. I can say 3 and 5 and press the plus button, and I get 8 showing up below. So the addition works. But it did get rid of my equal sign there. Now, if I don't want to get rid of the equal sign, instead of just setting it to global results, I can go to, where's it, text? So click on text, and I can click on join. Instead of doing that, I can put a join in here. I can put a result in here. I can go back to text, right? And then I can put an equal sign in here. So then I get an equal sign plus the result. And I can put a space if I want to as well. So I can get an equal sign plus the result, and I can join as many as I want. You can always click on these little settings things too and add another one. Let's say I wanted to add another one in there. Then it allows me to add another thing. So this is like string concatenation. I can remove it. So in the settings here, I can change how many I want to add. Make sense? So then you can do the same thing for the minus button. So you'll get the minus button, and you will do the same code in there. Questions?